Okay, so have you ever been at one of those four-way stops? Like where you're just absolutely white-knuckling it, trying to figure out what the other three drivers are even thinking, and like silently praying for a traffic light to just magically appear?
Yep.
You're so not alone today. We are going deep on that like uniquely stressful experience, but with a twist. We found this transcript from the great four-way debate. And just imagine it's these two commentators. They're like perched above this four-way stop, giving a play-by-play like it's the final seconds of some championship game. It is hilarious, but it also kind of reveals some really fascinating things about how we all navigate those like everyday moments where the rules are, let's just say, open to interpretation.
What's so interesting here is that four-way stops. They're like, it's an incredible microcosm of like social dynamics. You know, it's like you've got all these people, each in their own little world, and then suddenly they're forced to interact and anticipate each other's actions. It's all about like reading these subtle cues.
I'm hoping
that the other person
it's really
views in the same way.
It's like a silent dance-off, but with way higher stakes.
Exactly. And the stakes get even higher when you start to think about, like this transcript does, the personalities involved.
Oh, yes. Okay, so picture this. Sunny afternoon, quintessential small-town four-way stop.
Aunt Owls.
Our cast of characters, as lovingly described by our hilarious commentators. First up, we've got Brenda in her red sedan. And she's known for being decisive, but our commentators also mentioned that she might be running just a little heavy on the caffeine this morning.
And that little detail, that caffeine clue, it's so fascinating because it brings in this whole other layer of, okay, so are her actions based on confidence, or is it the coffee jitters talking? You know how you can sometimes find yourself like inching forward at a stop sign almost subconsciously. Yeah, that's Brenda's tell.
And of course, the other drivers
are
left to figure out what that tell even means.
Exactly. Which brings us to Dave, our next driver. He's behind the wheel of his trusty blue pickup truck. He's one of the locals, and let's just say he has a little bit of a reputation for just assuming he has the right of way.
Oh, yeah. Classic Dave, as our commentators put it. It's like he's working off of this, like, unspoken rule book.
Yeah.
That says, I was here first. Everyone knows the drill.
This is, like, such a classic example of how our own, like, driving styles and all the assumptions we bring create those unspoken rules. But the real question is, does anyone else at the intersection even get the memo?
Right. And then we have Carla entering the scene in her green minivan. Now, Carla, she is known for being cautious, which, I mean, you would think would be a good thing at a four-way stop.
You'd think so. But even being cautious, as we're about to see, can be open to interpretation, especially when you've got someone like Dave in the mix.
Oh, this is where it gets good. Okay, so Carla approaches the intersection, maybe a little hesitant. And just as Dave's about to make his move, totally convinced he's got the right of way, bam, Carla slams on her brakes.
Which makes you wonder, what message does that even send? Is it a clear, I'm waiting my turn, or does it just add another layer of confusion to this already very complex, nonverbal conversation?
Right. We haven't even factored in Mark yet, our final player, who arrives in his black sports car. And immediately starts revving his engine. The commentators joked that he's adding a little intimidation tactic, which, I mean, it makes you wonder.
Does a roaring engine make you more or less likely to yield? It kind of speaks to this almost subconscious hierarchy that we sometimes place on different vehicles, doesn't it?
It's like we're all playing this really high-stakes game, a four-way stop poker, each with our own tells and strategies.
It really is kind of like that. It's like the car almost becomes this extension of our driving personality, and it like influences how other people see us and then how we behave.
It's like the four-way stop becomes this like microcosm of the road itself with all the Richmond rules and
power dynamics.
Exactly. And that brings us to what I think is so fascinating about this transcript. Like
lays bare
all those unspoken rules, those almost subconscious agreements that we make with each other to like prevent utter chaos from happening at every single intersection. Okay, so let's break down some of these unspoken rules. What are some of the unspoken commandments of the four-way stop?
Well, you know, there's the classic first to arrive, first to go, which on the surface seems pretty straightforward, but in reality,
it's rarely that clear cut.
Right.
Like what happens when two cars get there at almost the exact same time.
Exactly. And then suddenly you've got this awkward standoff where everyone's just, trying to read each other, looking for eye contact, head nods, maybe even a little hand wave. It's like we've developed our own sign language for these exact situations.
They're all over this. They're pointing out Brenda's wavering gaze, the way that Dave is gripping the steering wheel. It's like they're narrating this silent film of nonverbal communication.
Fill in the caps in real time.
Which just goes to show how much we rely on all those nonverbal cues to, like, fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
The rules themselves.
That's so open to interpretation.
No. And even then, even with the best intentions, those cues can get misread. Like when Dave, or resident right-of-way enthusiast, seemed to take Brenda's, caffeine-fueled inching
Yeah.
as a sign that she's yielding to him.
Classic Dave. But it just goes to show that even in this seemingly simple scenario, there's just so much room for misunderstanding, for all our own biases and experiences to, like, color how we interpret even the smallest actions.
Totally. And let's not forget about that other big one, the one they drill into us. In driver's ed, yield to the right. Seems simple enough.
You'd think, in theory, yes, but even that rule, that seems so ironclad, can get kind of murky in the real world, especially when you think about how being overly cautious, like being overly committed, can actually create more confusion. And it's also
if you're constantly hesitating and second-guessing yourself while everyone else making their move, it's like you're throwing a wrench into this whole delicate dance of the four-way stop.
Exactly. Sometimes a little assertiveness, a clear indication of your intent, can actually be the more courteous option. It keeps things moving smoothly, and it prevents those, chain reactions of hesitant drivers who aren't really sure who's going next.
It's like everyone needs to be on the same page, even if that page is a little dog-eared and full of coffee stains. Speaking of which, how does our caffeine-fueled Brenda end up navigating all of this? So does Brenda, end up wearing her coffee, or does she conquer the four-way stop?
Well, according to our commentator, she totally nails it. Seems like that extra shot of espresso might have actually worked in her favor, gave her that, boost of confidence to navigate the whole intersection swiftly and safely.
There you go. Sometimes a little caffeine is exactly what the driving instructor ordered. And what about Mark, our engine revving wild card? Does he end up causing a four-way fender bender?
Not at all. He actually manages to make his way through without any incidents. Although, knowing Mark and his flair for the dramatic, I'm sure he made it memorable.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But, here's what I find so fascinating about this whole thing. Despite the lack of any real clear instructions, despite all the potential for chaos and miscommunication, everyone makes it through, unscathed, in fact. The commentators, they actually describe it as this spectacular display of synchronized driving, this almost balletic display of cooperative chaos. It's actually kind of heartwarming.
It really is, and it speaks to something pretty profound about us humans, our remarkable ability to adapt to these complex social situations, even when the rules are so poorly defined. We just observe, we predict, we adjust our behavior based on
the tightest cues.
And somehow, most of the time, it works. It's a testament to our on-the-fly problem-solving skills, and maybe even just a little bit of faith in our fellow drivers.
I like that. Little faith goes a long way. It really makes you appreciate this subtle, unspoken language we've all developed that keeps us from crashing into each other.
Totally. But it also, I think, highlights how important it is to stay alert, to practice what they call defensive driving, being aware of what's around you, trying to predict what other drivers might do, being ready to adjust your own behavior. I mean, those are essential skills for navigating, not just four-way stops, but life itself.
That's so true. The four-way stop as a metaphor for life. I love it. It's that delicate dance of observation, assertiveness, and maybe even a little luck sprinkled in there.
Cheers.
But as we zoom into the future with all these self-driving cars hitting the roads. Yeah. It makes you wonder.
How are they going to handle the four-way stop?
Exactly. Will their algorithms be able to, decipher a car lane? Will they know when to be assertive versus cautious? Will they understand these unspoken rules that we as humans have spent years perfecting through trial and error and maybe a few near misses along the way?
It's such a fascinating question, and it's one that researchers are actually actively trying to answer as we speak, because programming a car to understand all those nuances of human behavior. I mean, that's a whole other level of complexity. It might require a whole new set of rules, or really even a whole new communication system between cars.
Whoa, okay, so it's ooh, we're about to enter this whole new era of driving where the rules are literally being rewritten as we speak. That is mind-blowing. Well, there you have it, folks. A deep dive into the surprisingly complex world of the four-way stop. A world of unspoken rules, caffeine-fueled decisions,
That's it.
the enduring human capacity for navigating chaos. Keep all that in mind next time you find yourself at a four-way stop. Stay alert. Channel your inner Brenda. Coffee optional, of course. And maybe give a little nod of thanks to all those unwritten rules that keep us moving relatively safely in the right direction.